Hello everyone, welcome back to the CIS Top 20 Control series by Lean Breaking Barriers powered by CyberPreserve. My name is Aastha and today we are going to deep dive into control number 6, which is monitoring, maintenance and analysis of audit logs. And before wasting any time, let's deep dive into the control benefits, requirements, risk associated with the control and the cost, or basically the tools of trade involved in order to implement this control. So here we go. As I said, we are going to discuss control number 6 today, which is maintenance, monitoring, analysis of audit log, which is also known as audit log management under version 8. So recently in May, CIS released another series of these controls, which have been now reduced from 20 to 18. And under that section, this control falls into the category of control 8 under audit log management. So we are going to simultaneously cover both of these, like we're collaborating version 7 and version 8 both. And with that, let's move ahead. So before we discuss anything further, let's first know a little bit about me. So I'm one of the lead cybersecurity instructors at Flatiron School. I'm also the founder of CyberPreserve and Lean Breaking Barriers Women in Cybersecurity Circle. I'm also a committee member of OWASP Women in AppSec and a member of VSIS. Let's look at today's agenda. Today's agenda is focused on discussing the definition of this control, the requirements around this control, a little bit about log monitoring, the risk around implementing this control. So if you do not implement this control, what can be the possible risk, the benefits, the tool of the trades, and yes, of course, the final conclusions. So first of all, let's see what does this control say under the CIS controls. Under this control definition, it states collect, alert, review, and retain audit logs of events that could help detect, understand, and recover from an attack. So what does this say? This says that it is important to collect logs, use them for alerting and reporting, review these logs, and retain means store these logs. Why? Because logs can be helpful in detecting, understanding, and recovering from an attack. Now, why this control is very much critical? Reason being, it's the log itself. So, what is a log? A log in itself is a record. Basically, logs are record of events which are taking place in your system, applications, and devices. So if many of you don't know, in fact, your firewall, your IDS, your IPS, each and every device on your network, your systems, your applications, they are capable of generating logs. And these logs are timestamped events, which actually tells you about what activities took place in your systems, in your applications, in your network. So a very simple scenario is, let's say a system crashed. Now, when this system crashed, if we are maintaining logs, if we are collecting these logs, we are maintaining logs from that system, definitely there might be an event generated inside the system which can help us understanding that why this system crashed. Similarly, at the time of incidents, when a particular attack takes place, if it is affecting an application, a network, a system, or altogether, all of these, then logs become an important part of correlating these events together to build a picture of what might have happened. It's similar to a physical crime-based scenario where the police is investigating about a murder. So when did the murder took place? When did the murder take place? Then who might be the murderer? Then victim who was murdered, who is on his speed dial or her speed dial, whoever is the victim. So all the traces and investigations are collected. Logs serve the same purpose in our computer science domain. In our IT, log plays this important role where we try to identify through logs that what might have happened if an incident has taken place, how we can detect something if we want to, how we can recover from something, and how we can look at these events in details and actually correlate them together to identify what went wrong. Now, Log analysis and log collection is an important part. Sometimes, not only because we are recovering from an incident, we want to keep track of the attacker's activity, but at the same time, when we are complying to different types of standards and regulation, logging and monitoring also can help us in identifying if we are not compliant, if there is any violation. So not just logging and monitoring helps you keep track of events, helps you detect an activity, basically an abnormal activity, an anomaly in your network systems and application or your overall environment, but also keeps you in check that if you are adhering to your compliances and regulations. So, as I said, log monitoring is not so easy. And of course, for log monitoring purpose, one of the things which is highly recommended is that we should have a centralized logging mechanism where we are collecting logs, we are managing the logs, and we are monitoring them and further analyzing those logs. So basically, log collection, management, analysis, all of these factors, they come under the single terminology of security information and event management, where we utilize tools like SIEM tools. And these tools, how they help us is, and how they help an organization in general is, these tools can help us in collection of logs from variety of devices in your environment, so that we have a centralized location, we have a centralized visibility of what's happening in our environment. And for that purpose, in order to have that visibility, we need to collect logs. In order to monitor, okay, let's say you are saying that we are collecting the logs and we are monitoring and analyzing them. How you're doing this? You might be storing them. So log management is dealing with like storage, log retention policies. Then also it is also regarded, like it also belongs to basically the components of a SIEM, where we focus on storage, how we are storing logs, in what form we are storing logs, what is the log limit? Okay, so basically how much logs you can keep. So what is your storage limit? What is your day-to-day log collection limit? So all of that comes into log management. And finally, monitoring and analysis is more on visualization, alerting and reporting, where we are trying to search logs in real time, where we are trying to create some real-time alerts, schedule some alerts, then create some reports, schedule some reports, which can be used for further monitoring and analysis. And this was a very small, brief information around log monitoring, because I think it's important when we are understanding this control, it's important to first of all understand what is log collection, what is management, and what's monitoring and analysis. Now, moving on to the requirements of this control. So basically what all I mentioned in the previous slides, in different chunks, we have covered this requirements section here. Now, before we move to this requirements section, there is an important thing which we have been referencing in our previous control is our implementation groups. So already, if you have referred to our previous slides, our first initial controls, our speakers have also talked about the 3 implementation groups which CIS has emphasized on. So one is IG1, basic cyber hygiene, which is IG1, then we have IG2, and then we have IG3, which is implementation group 1, implementation group 2, implementation group 3. Now, this implementation groups basically depends on the capability. So the implementation group 1 they have a minimum capability of implementing a control, be it the budget, be it the workforce. They can implement the minimal of cybersecurity operations. The implementation group 2 further deals with those kinds of requirements which can further help in reducing some potential complexities under cyber attacks. And IG3 is more focused on targeted, sophisticated target like attacks or your zero-day attacks. So basically IG3 is implementing more advanced section of this control. IG2 is intermediary, and IG1 is the basic, like what is the basic you can do in order to implement this control? Then what is another level? What is the second level advanced thing you can do? And finally, the most advanced requirement that you can implement to fulfill this control. Also, all these IG1, IG2, IG3 also involve costings. So when we proceed towards more advanced implementation of the control, of course, it requires more tools, more software or hardware requirements. So based on those areas or based on those scenarios, more cost is involved. So if you look at this requirements table, basically it talks about, first of all, establishing a logging requirement. So before you can collect, maintain, and you can basically collect, maintain, store, and use these logs for monitoring and analysis, you should have a logging criteria, what we should be logging, from what type of devices we should be logging, which logs are important to us, because you just cannot go about collecting all types of logs from all types of devices in your environment. You should know which types of logs are important, because when logs comes into picture, volume comes into picture, numbers comes into picture. And all of this directly impacts the storage, what kind of database you're using. So everything is somehow involved with some kind of cost. So first, every organization, and especially at the time of big data we are living, so logging requirements, then after that, collecting the audit. So basically audit logs are more around activities like you logged in, you logged out, you created a file, you deleted a file, what access you made on a particular system. So basically those are audit, like every action is stored. So collect important audit logs, then ensure adequate log storage is there. Then the other set of these requirements, they come up with more details. So you can see the first three set of this requirement is implemented by all the three IG groups, IG1, IG2, IG3. Starting from the fourth, which says time synchronization. So time synchronization says all the logs that you're collecting, they should be synchronized with the time, because if they're not synchronized with time and then you're trying to correlate them together, that will not make sense if they're not synchronized. The second thing is, if you want to look for more detailed logs like DNS logs, URL request logs, command line audit logs. So that is more complex. Command line, like real-time activities. If what is like in a particular system, if somebody is opening command line, collecting those real-time logs, then of course, centralizing logs is very much important. Retaining audit logs. Retaining is around log retention policy. Log retention policy is mostly around, you might have seen that your compliance and standards like PCI DSS, HIPAA, IS 27000, GDPR, each of them, they come with certain requirements, and each of these requirements somehow are pointing towards log monitoring. And while they're pointing towards log monitoring, their sub requirements are pointing towards for how long you can store these logs. So each of these compliance and standards have a different requirement around this. So you have to pay attention to that. Then reviewing these logs from time to time. And of course, if possible, collect your logs from your service provider as well. So these were some of the requirements which come under the implementation of this control. Let's now quickly discuss what if, let's say, you're not implementing this control. What can go wrong? Okay. So one of the things is important logs that can help you identify events like failed authentication. Failed authentication means somebody is trying to get into a system, okay, and they're trying to brute force. If you're not collecting these logs and you're not reviewing and monitoring these logs, you might miss these kinds of activities. Certain important events, like highly valuable events like logins, transactions, they need to be logged, because we need to know who made what transactions at what time. Because if someone says if certain transactions were made from someone's account and they say, I did not make it, then who made it? If someone says, I did not log into my system at so and so time, then who logged in? So if you're not doing it, you're definitely missing out on these things. Then logs from your application, there's a certain problem in your application server, let's say. Then how do you get to know? Then another important thing is when you're performing penetration testing, when you're performing vulnerability assessment, at that point, if you get to know when these kinds of activities are performed and you get to know what types of log are generated, they are also important. And also, what if an attacker is trying to scan your network? You need to know. And nowadays, attackers, they are smart enough. They are more sophisticated than before. They will not be running some regular scans on your network. They would be running some random scans. So how to identify that randomness? How to identify abnormalities among normal events? So if you are not at all collecting logs, how do you know about all these activities? How do you detect anything which is abnormal, which is malicious? How to detect an attacker's activity in real time? How would you do that? So risks are more, trust me. One of the risks, like while I talk about this risk section, one of the things I would like to highlight here is the target attack of 2013. In the target attack of 2013, if you go and Google it and research this particular topic, you'll definitely get to know that during the target attack, there were alerts which were generated, and those alerts were somehow neglected or action was not taken. And due to that, it turned out to be a biggest disaster at the end of 2013 and nightmare for target. So logging monitoring is very, very much required. Okay, so as we discuss the risk, now let's look at the benefits. What good can happen to you while you implement this control? So of course, centralized logging. You will, like nowadays, SIEM tools, they're smart enough. They can help you in centralized logging, help you in run some real-time searches, query your logs, correlate your logs, automatic correlation. So it's like automatically categorizing your data, then running correlation searches, then setting up some real-time alerts, as I said, schedule some alerts, include threat intelligence into your log. So basically integrating threat intelligence feeds with your log data, which can further enhance detection and analysis of logs. So these additional activities, these benefits are, so one of the benefits, as I said, is like collection and storage and monitoring, which offers you is that you are able to have a greater visibility at one place. You are able to look at your events. You are able to detect anomalies. You are able to set up alerts, reports, visualization. Definitely, you can set up some visualization. SIEM highly support that. And at the same time, you can integrate other areas of security like threat intelligence with your SIEM and analyze your data better. So customization is there. Automation is there. Tools like SOAR, which is security orchestration, automation, and response. These kinds of tools can be integrated with your SIEMs, which can be further used for automated analysis. I'm not saying 100%, but yes, to a certain amount. So these are the highly benefits. And of course, 24/7 monitoring, logs would be collected 24/7, 24/7 log monitoring. So these are all the benefits associated with this particular control. Now, an important topic, which I never ever want to skip, is the tools of the trade and the costing. So as I've told you in the previous slides, that SIEM is the tool that we mostly use for this purpose. And while talking about SIEM, there are different types of SIEM which are available in the market. Some of the most known, most common ones are like Splunk, Logarithm, 𝐀𝐮𝐢𝐭, which we call it as Elasticsearch, and we have also Wazoo. So these are just the few ones which I've mentioned here. There are many more in the market. There is IBM QRadar as well. There is your SolarWinds as well. So there are many other SIEMs in the market. But what we're going to focus right now is the costings. Now, when we come to the costing, one thing I want to highlight here is certain SIEMs, they are commercial in the sense you have to buy license, yearly license, and those licensing requirements also is dependent on the data. What kind of data? Let's say if you're collecting 5 GB logs, so 5 GB is the size. So if you're collecting 5 GB logs per day, then what can be your yearly licensing? So tools like Logarithm, Splunk, these are commercial tools. You have to pay for their license, and their licenses, they come with different types of deployment model. Like, is your organization, let's say, a small size organization, a medium size organization, a large size organization? What are the different components of SIEM? Basically, basic components of SIEM are required for collection, storage, and monitoring. But at the same time, the scalability of the SIEM, like how many data collectors or how many, let's say, important thing like data collectors, then we have something known as indexers for like normalizing your logs, then storage, databases. So for all those requirements, you have to first come up with your logging requirement. Then you have to look at the various costing. So if you go and search on Google, you will definitely not find an exact cost for each one of them, because it highly varies based on your software requirements, hardware requirements, other support and maintenance requirements around the SIEM. So Splunk and Logarithm, these two are the commercial tools. 𝐻𝐴 and Elasticsearch, which the symbol which you're looking at the bottom is of ELK, E-L-K, ELK, ELK Stack, Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. Both of them, 𝐻𝐴 and ELK Stack, they are open source. These are open source solutions, but open source does mean that there is no licensing cost, but at the same time, these open source solutions, they come up with maintenance and hardware costs. So it's never a situation that your SIEM is free of cost completely. It's never a situation. Either you are paying for the software like Splunk, or you're paying for the hardware in case of Logarithm. And if you're paying for other infrastructure like server storages for your open source SIEM, the cost is definitely there. And now what we are going to focus is what could be the possible cost in terms of hardware, infrastructure, software, and support. So here we are going to look at the table where it shows, like, let's say if under the hardware requirement, it for a small size organization, it's the minimum requirements is mostly around $25,000. Most of these costs are yearly. Then hardware, like for medium size organization, it's $60,000. For very large size organization, $100,000. Your server cost, $8,000. Storage, $1,500. Switches cost $3,000. Now, look at the software part, which I was saying. Event volume 5 GB means your per day limit of collecting logs is 5 GB. If that's your limit, then the cost is 8,000. So Splunk has a similar cost to that, 9,000 or something for yearly basis. And I think that's for 1 GB mostly. Now, event volume, again, when it grows from 5 GB, so let's say it's a medium to large size organization and the number of logs that they are collecting has increased from 5 GB to 20 GB. So your requirement is 20 GB logs per day. So that's going to be $24,000 yearly. Then it's the event volume for 100 GB is for $40,000, and other volumes are like $100,000. What is the annual support cost that you might have to give? So it would be the 20% of the cost of your software plus hardware. So if you're looking at the costings, definitely you can look at these estimated costs. Also, you can visit the website for Logarithm, ELK Stack, then Splunk, 𝐻𝐴, and you can also contact their sales. So in case of Splunk and Logarithm, you might have to directly reach out to their, let's say, sales team. And in case of your open source tool, so you'll get some, from the open source tool, you'll get some basic requirements done. Like you don't have to pay for the license, but as I said, for rest of the hardware and infrastructure requirements, you might have to identify, and then like this table is available. Then you have to look at these costs, like how much the storage would cost you, how much the hardware and infrastructure would cost you, and that will make up the cost for your open source SIEM. And this is it under this control. Thank you for watching the control number 6. And I will be sure to put on these controls when we will be uploading the video. So these are some of the links that I have referenced for creating this presentation. So definitely I would like to share these links with you. Some of these links also cover detail around software pricing for Splunk, then Logarithm, then 𝐻𝐴 and Elastic, of course. So thank you so much for watching this particular control video with us. We'll see you again with control number 7 very soon. Signing off. Bye-bye.